All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank everyone for being here today. We're going to go ahead and get started. And before we jump into our program today, I'm going to call on Chairman Hitchens to open us up with a word of prayer.
Thank you. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, we ask that you lead us and guide us today as we go through the business of taking care of the citizens of this state. We also ask that you take care of those who are least fortunate than many of us here. We're thankful for having a roof over our head, for having heat when it's cold, and for having food to nourish our bodies. We ask all these things in God's name. Amen.
Thank you. Well, first I want to start by thanking our lunch sponsors today, Georgia EMC and Georgia Power. We appreciate the food for the committee earlier. And Chairman Stevens got called to another meeting, so I'm going to fill in for him today. And we've got a great lineup. I know some members are coming and going, so they'll be in and out. We have another meeting on Thursday where we'll hear from several of the economic developers from different parts of the state, just kind of highlighting some of the success in their area. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be our final meeting for the year. But I'm glad that we're able to hear the presentations that we have scheduled today and for everyone that came out. And so with no further ado, we're going to hear from the Public Service Commission at this point, and I'm going to invite Chairman Jason Shaw, former state representative, to come forward and present.
Well, I'll try not to mess with Bragg's slide here. I didn't bring a slide today. I hope that's all right. But Tom Krause did prepare a presentation, but I'm not even going to use that. I just want to kind of take the opportunity first to thank y'all for this opportunity. We always welcome any chance we get to talk about what we do over at the Public Service Commission right here next door, because a lot of people, I think we can all agree, a lot of people don't quite understand what the PSC does. We're not the Professional Standards Commission. We are the Public Service Commission. We regulate the investor-owned utilities in the state. We have 4 units that all work hard. We've got facilities protection that we deal with all the pipeline, underground safety, and the natural gas infrastructure. We've got our natural gas unit. We've got our electric unit, and we've got our renewables unit. And we're a very small agency. We're quasi-judicial. Right now we've got, I think, about 87, 88 employees. Before the recession, we had about 106. So we're pretty lean. Everybody over there is, we mainly got a lot of lawyers, accountants, and engineers. A lot of smart people in our building. We even have a few people, quite a few, that went to that trade school over there on North Avenue. But some of my staff gets upset when I say that. But a lot of good Georgia Tech grads in our building. We're thankful for that. But we're, like I said, we welcome the opportunity to kind of, I'm just going to say, toot our horn a little bit. I'm real proud of what we do. As a former House member and a former member of this Economic Development Committee, I kind of wanted to mainly take the chance today to talk about how what we do at the PSC relates to economic development in our state. Because we do consider ourselves to be an economic development arm of the state. And the reason I say that is because we all know that we like to talk about our status in the country as far as the #1 state for business, and that reputation that we've had for a long, long time. And I'll say that reputation starts with the hard work of this committee and the policies that y'all implement to make Georgia what Georgia is, and to have that reputation. And we all know to have that reputation, it starts with workforce and education and transportation infrastructure and all the normal things that you think about and talk about when you talk about economic development. But I'm here to also remind everyone that we would not have that reputation if it weren't for the fact that we have what I think is probably the most reliable electric grid system in the country. And the proof of that is in just in the last couple of 3 years. If you look at the extreme weather events that we've had here, starting with Winter Storm Elliott, that Christmas storm a couple of years ago. Well, all of our neighbors had rolling blackouts. TVA had a lot of issues in Tennessee and Kentucky, Duke and Carolinas, and even into Florida had some rolling blackouts. And our utilities, they worked overtime during that storm like they do every time there's a weather event, and we were able to keep the lights on. That's our focus, is reliability. We would not be the #1 state for business if it wasn't for this reliable infrastructure that we have, our electric system, our natural gas system, and what y'all have done in conjunction with the feds on rural broadband. I'm just here to tell you, as a product of rural Georgia and someone who lives on a family farm that my kids didn't have internet until recently, it is a game changer. And I thank y'all for that, and we thank you for the role that we've been able to play at the PSC to help with that as well. But we would not have this status if it wasn't for this reliability and if it wasn't for the competitive rate structures that we have. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, we have been through a perfect storm of rate hikes in our state, just like the rest of the country. During this inflationary period the last few years, we've seen electric rates in this country go up 33% in the U.S. That's about 9% higher than groceries. And we all see it in our bills every month. And we had some, so a little bit of extra pressure here in Georgia. We were building the first nuclear units, Vogtle 3 and 4, the first 2 units built in this country in over 30 years. And we got it done, thanks to the owners, Georgia Power Company, Oglethorpe Power, the municipals. It was a collective effort and a very painful effort. And whether you're a fan of nuclear or not, I personally am a fan of nuclear. I don't think we're ever going to be able to meet the needs of this country and the unprecedented load growth that we're seeing now without all resources. But we went through that, and everybody knows the cost overruns and the Westinghouse bankruptcy and everything that happened in that project. But I think we can all smile now and say we've got these 2 units running, and that's a 80-year resource. It's the cleanest energy you can get. Vogtle units 3 and 4, with the addition of those 2 units, we've got a resource right here in Burke County, Georgia, that's the largest producer of clean energy in the United States. The rate structure that we have is still very competitive. We have not been immune to rate hikes and inflation, but with the unprecedented load growth that we're seeing now, a lot of that is attributed. Why are these data centers and the artificial intelligence world that we're in now, which is critical infrastructure for this country? It's national security. Whether you like them or not, they're coming. And what we're dealing with in Georgia now, and the reason why a lot of these data centers are looking to Georgia, as right now we're the top state in the country for these, is because of this reliable infrastructure and the capacity that we have that other states don't. We are right now at the commission, we're in the middle of, we're just starting what's called the Integrated Resource Plan, the IRP as we call it. That's statutory. Back in '91, a young representative named Boyd Pettit from Cartersville, Georgia, was the author of that piece of legislation. And I'm here to tell you that this Integrated Resource Plan Act that was passed by the legislature then is still in law today. And I think it's part of our secret sauce of why we have this reliable system that we have. It's because of the IRP process, which is a 20-year long-range planning, resource planning tool. Georgia Power files it every 3 years. They filed the case in January of this year. We had the first rounds of hearings. We had 4 days of hearings last week. We have 25 interveners in that docket. Very, very, very highly technical process. And this is where we really, really look at long-range planning in terms of resources and how do we maintain this reliable system that we have. I would just welcome y'all. You can pull it up on our YouTube. The next rounds of hearings is coming up later this month, but we'll have a final vote on that case in July. But it's because of this house that we have this process that has been so important. We actually had to open up the IRP last year because of the unprecedented load growth we're seeing and have an update to the IRP. So we had that case last year. We voted on it in April and added quite a bit of new megawatts to the system that's been procured now through several different type RFPs and all source capacity RFP. We're also the number 7 state in the country now for solar, renewable power. And, you know, we're blessed in our state to have a lot of good land, most of it in South Georgia where a lot of this development's going on, and it's causing some growing pains, quite honestly, for folks down in my part of the state that are starting to get concerned about the amount of land that's going into solar. But I said earlier, it takes all resources. You have to have a diverse array of fuel mix to power this reliable grid that we have, and solar is playing a big part of that. Back in 2013 in the IRP is when Commissioner Bubba McDonald proposed with a motion to add 525 megawatts of solar power. That was the start of solar in Georgia. And now we're up around 7,000 megawatts of solar power in Georgia. We got a pretty good mix, in my opinion. Just to give you the breakdown, right now we're about 41%. This is just the Georgia Power system that I'm referring to, because you'll hear from the EMCs, and as you know, we don't regulate the EMCs with regards to rates and resource planning, but they probably have a pretty similar mix, but we're 41% relying on natural gas for a fuel source. To put that in perspective, you can go down into Florida and they're probably closer to 70% natural gas fuel mix. We're higher on nuclear because we just built these 2 new units. We've got about 14% nuclear, 18% coal, and 20% renewables, mainly solar. And then we got some biomass and hydro. I'll just touch on the data centers and the load growth a little bit, just to kind of put that in perspective. This happened really, really fast, as y'all know. Back in 22, we had the IRP, that we voted on it in July, and then just a little over a year later, around October of 2023, is when the load growth had been very modest for about the last 15 years or so, a couple of hundred megawatts a year, because energy efficiency is sort of helping to mitigate the load growth. And then all of a sudden, what happened in 23? The load growth just went through the roof. And there's approximately at that time, well, the whole Georgia Power system at the time was around a little under 17,000 megawatts. Well, when Georgia Power, I'll say, surprised us with the load growth numbers in 23, that there was approximately about that same number of megawatts, around 16,000 megawatts of projects in the pipeline looking to come to Georgia. About 80% of those projects can be attributed to data centers. Well, by the time they filed the update case that we had last year, and we voted on that in April, that number was up to about 24,000 megawatts. By the time we got into this calendar year, that number was up to around 34,000 megawatts of projects in the pipeline. That doesn't mean they're all coming to Georgia, but that's the number, that's the load factor for the number of projects that are looking at Georgia and looking at sites. That number today is about 40,000 megawatts. So what does that mean? So if, let's say, 8,000 or so of those megawatts we think will come, that will actually hit on the Georgia Power system, so that's what we're prepared for, that's what we're adding, we're going to be able to meet the demand. That's the number one thing that keeps me and my 4 colleagues up at night, and our staff, is how do we meet this unprecedented demand? And we feel really good about it. The recent rules and regulations that we have adopted to deal with these large load customers is something that's going to benefit all of our ratepayers, because we're ensuring that these large load customers that are over 100 megawatts will pay all of their cost to connect, whether it's generation, transmission, distribution. And the way we're doing that is through these minimum bill provisions, where all those costs are calculated on the front end before these contracts are signed. These customers are agreeing to pay 100% of that minimum cost to connect, and we're locking them in for a much longer period of time as far as the length of the contracts. Historically, these customers were on 3 and 5 year type contracts. Now we're doing 15-year contracts, so that regardless of what happens with these customers, because my biggest fear is, what if the technologies change, things like that, because these are warehouses full of servers and air conditions and things like that. They could pick up and go somewhere else because there's not as much labor involved. Well, they're still locked in for these contracts for that length of time, so they're on the hook. That's how we're dealing with them, and I don't mean to scare you, because it is astounding, the numbers, but it is a challenge for us and for the state, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to continue to grow our state, to grow our infrastructure, and it's a critical infrastructure. But so it's a challenge and an opportunity, and we're tackling it head on in conjunction, and just like not just Georgia Power, but Oglethorpe and the municipals are doing the same thing. I'll touch on the natural gas side now. Obviously, the biggest company is Atlanta Gas Light that we regulate. Just like with the electric system, we would not have this unprecedented growth and industrial growth that we've seen in our state without a reliable natural gas infrastructure and a safe, reliable infrastructure. And that's what we do every day. Our staff is try to maintain that. We're also, as a product of rural Georgia, and y'all know me, when I was in the House, I was passionate about rural Georgia, and I remained passionate about rural Georgia. And we've been able to do a lot just in the last few years through our Universal Service Fund and our Economic Development Tariff to expand our natural gas infrastructure into parts of Georgia that didn't have gas before, into rural Georgia and places, because we're seeing, as y'all know, we're seeing a lot of economic development in the rural parts of our state now, which is a great thing. So for so long, it was all mainly concentrated in the metro areas, and we've seen unprecedented growth. But the way we've been able to do that is also by having this natural gas infrastructure in the rural parts. So we've been doing a lot to expand that infrastructure. And if y'all have areas that you're concerned about and have projects, reach out to us. We want to help. We want to help. We're sort of limited in what we can do at one time. The Universal Service Fund is funded through excess profits from AGL's subsidiary, but we've got, approximately about $70 million. Now we have probably $250 million in projects, so we can't get to all of them, but this is what we're doing with those tools. I mentioned we've got a telecom unit as well, but as y'all know, there ain't a whole lot of landline telephones anymore, so that unit is not much smaller than it used to be. But they're still doing a good job. I will just kind of pause there. Be glad to entertain any questions, but that's basically kind of what we do. I mentioned the Facilities Protection Unit. That unit does a good job. You'll see our cars out around the state and inspecting pipelines and keeping. Anytime you have a natural gas event, any kind of a disaster type event, it's our folks that go out and investigate. So I'm real proud of our folks, and got some of our folks here. Got Tom Bond, who's our Director of Utilities. I like to call him the smartest guy in the building. Tom's been with the state for how long, Tom? 27 years? 34. So 27 or so at the PSC. He was with the Attorney General's office before that. Tom Krause, everybody, y'all know Tom Krause. He's our Public Information Officer and our Legislative Liaison. And Reese McAllister, our Executive Director. These folks have been with the state a long time, especially Reese and Tom. And if y'all ever need us over there, all you got to do is reach out. Be glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Chairman, and Reese, Tom, appreciate y'all being with us today, and all that you do at the PSC. One thing you mentioned a minute ago is that y'all have the resources that you need as we are dealing with the increase in the load, to be able to regulate and take into consideration those new customers coming on board. And take the infrastructure costs into account as they're coming to our state, and we're increasing the load for our state. So we're glad that y'all are taking that into consideration, thinking about that. This committee was where we passed the EMC broadband bill in 2019. Some of y'all were here when we did that. That's the first bill that I voted on, and never forgotten that. You always remember your first bill.
Yeah.
But that was a big deal and certainly did help bring broadband to a lot of the rural parts of our state. So, committee members, do y'all have any questions for Chairman Shaw before we move on? I don't want to overlook anything. All right. Well, Chairman, thank you again. It's always good to see you. And
Yes, sir.
I know they are always very accessible and work hard on our behalf. And I encourage y'all, if you don't know the PSC members, to make the effort to get to know them. We've really got some fine folks at the Public Service Commission.
Thank y'all.
Thank
Good
you.
to be with you.
All right, so we're going to move on down the list. Georgia Electric Membership Corporation. Jason's going to come up, Jason Bragg. And okay, I was going to say, do anybody from your team that you want to introduce, feel free to. So, Bradley, we're glad to have you with us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can y'all hear me? Sorry,
Yes.
I need to lean in to eat that mic. How about we do this? There we go. Yeah, I got it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate y'all having us here today. My name is Jason Bragg, Vice President of Government Relations with Georgia EMC. With me today, I have Bradley Harris, who is our Economic Development Manager with Georgia EMC. As you may know, Georgia EMC is the trade association that represents Georgia's 41 EMCs. I want to talk to you today about two things. One, about our state's energy market and how we keep electricity reliable and affordable. You heard a little bit about the PSC angle from Chairman Shaw. I'm going to talk to you about the electric cooperative side of that. And then secondly, I'm going to have Bradley come up and talk a little bit about what our state's EMCs do and the work that we do to support the state in their economic development efforts as we look to grow businesses and jobs around this great state that we all live and work in. So I have a slide here. I just wanted to show you. Sometimes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Just a little bit of who Georgia EMC is on the front end. We are 41 electric cooperatives scattered all throughout every corner of the state. Each one of our EMCs are led by democratically elected boards of directors, which means those same members that are setting the rates and the policies for those co-ops are also paying those same rates. We are not for profit. And in total, we serve about 4.4 million Georgians statewide, operate in almost about 75% of the state's land area. We are in parts of 157 of 159 counties. And the most important one, just for us, that we like to point out is our meters per mile, which is less than 12 meters per mile, which is about a third of what Georgia Power's customers typically have. As you know, our EMCs were formed back in the 30s and 40s to serve those rural areas that weren't getting electricity. So that's a little bit about who we are. So I wanted to start and talk about a little more on how our electric cooperative system works in Georgia. If you walk through this slide on the top left, on the top left we have our generation side, which is Oglethorpe, which is handled largely for 38 of our 41 EMCs through Oglethorpe Power. They provide our generation services. Think our power plants. They're a part owner of Plant Vogel, as you heard Chairman Shaw say, and own a number of other assets that we'll get to in the second side. Also have Green Power EMC that supports us on the renewable development side. Green Power EMC is a wholly owned company of all 38 of those EMCs that are a member of Oglethorpe system that works out and obtains renewable energy for us on the solar, wind, and biomass front. And they were actually the first renewable utility in the entire state, set up in 2001, and have been serving our members greatly since then. Moving on to the right, you have our transmission, which is handled in our state for the EMCs by Georgia Transmission. They own the high voltage power lines that you see many times along state highways, interstates, that transmit that power from the generating facilities to the distribution co-ops, which are our 41 EMCs. 3 of our EMCs, I heard me mention there's a little bit of confusion. I want to clear it up. We have 41 total EMCs in the state. 38 of those are part of the Oglethorpe Georgia Transmission System. The other 3 are part of get their generation and transmission from the Tennessee Valley Authority, with some of those other electric co-ops and municipal providers that are in the Tennessee Valley, Kentucky, North Carolina, that kind of upper area north of our state. And then finally, we also have Georgia Systems Operation, which is our kind of grid operator that controls and monitors our electric generation and transmission to make sure that power gets through those lines and to those end EMCs. I want to start now by talking a little bit about, move on here. About our Georgia Territorial Electric Service Act. This is the act that was passed by the legislature in 1973 that really sets up how our state, how we deliver electricity to the citizens and businesses of our state. One of the things it did when it was passed back in 1973 is it divided the state up into 94 different electric service territories. You have Georgia Power, which is obviously the largest, 41 EMCs, and the balance of that 94 being electric cities and municipal providers, and actually one county, which I'm sure they'll tell you about when they get up here and talk. Our Territorial Act set up two important exceptions that I think you, as members of this committee, would be interested to understand that really help facilitate economic development. One is the large load and customer choice provision. This is pretty simple. This just means any new business or customer that moves into our state whose connected load is higher than 900 kilowatts. So think typically the back of the envelope we use is like a large new Publix grocery store coming out of the ground. Typically those are going to be hit that threshold. They have a one-time choice of electric providers at the time of initial connection. This is a really great tool that I know the department we'll talk about this a little later, but the department really mentions what a great tool that is in recruitment of businesses to come here. It provides some competition between the energy providers in the state. It really gives us a leg up on our neighboring states on bringing some of those large projects, especially the large manufacturing projects, to our state that are going to be heavy energy users. The second exception that I just want to mention before I get into the benefits is the corridor rights. Simply put, corridor rights just said that if you had a line going somewhere prior to the passage of the act in 1973, then you have the exclusive right to serve within a couple hundred feet of that line. That just protects investments that people have put in the ground prior to 1973. So what did the Territorial Act that I was just explaining do for Georgians? So it did three things. One, it ensures us reliable and affordable power. It avoids the duplication of facilities. We don't run, the same distribution providers don't run lines down the side of each other. Because of the defined service territories, it gives our utilities and our generating facilities the ability to plan. Long-term planning, obviously, in the utility business is key. It takes a long time to get some of these assets up and running, and making sure that we have the generation and the capacity we need to meet the needs of a growing state is something we think about every day. It values reliability. As you heard Chairman Shaw say, our electric grid in this state has been unbelievably resilient. We haven't had some of the issues that you've seen in other states, such as Texas, the Carolinas, and Tennessee recently, as some of their weather. And as a result of all this, it's made Georgia's electric rates average around 13.7 cents a kilowatt hour, whereas our nationwide average is about 16.83 based on the latest data from the EIA up in Washington, D.C. As you can see, Georgia remains about 17% lower than the national average. Second thing it does, which is important, it protects consumers. We provide non-discriminatory rates and terms for every customer based on your customer class, whether you're residential, commercial, retail. There's a rate that can fit there's usually a rate that can fit your energy use of what business you're in. Fosters stable rates. The predictability that we talked about, the ability to plan, lets us do the long-range planning that we get to do to maintain those stable rates. And finally, and this is really important, it obligates, there's an obligation to serve as part of that Territorial Act, where we are obligated to serve every customer within our defined service territory. That's really important for electric co-ops. That's really where we were founded back in the 1930s and 40s, but we have to ensure that every member that is on our system has access to the same power as everybody else. Thirdly, and this is the one probably this committee wants to hear about the most today, is how does the Territorial Act promote economic development? And it does. As I mentioned earlier, if you talk to the department, they'll tell you that one of our biggest legs up we have is that customer choice provision that I talked about that allows new businesses coming into the state with a connected load over 900 kW to have a one-time choice provider. As I said earlier, that just really gives us a leg up on our competition when we're competing for those larger loads. They're going to be heavy energy users. That obviously is going to be a large cost to their doing business. In contrast, as I said, South Carolina's system is basically wherever you build your plant, whoever has that territory is going to be the one doing it. This is just another competitive thing that gives us a leg up to doing it. It also ensures, certainty for us as utilities, so we know who our customers are going to be, and allows us to plan to make sure that we meet those needs going forward. Clearly, I think we've seen, and I think just our state's success on the economic development front is, I think the Territorial Act has served our state really well for the last 52 years, and we've really set up we're in a very unique space in terms of the country. I know that we talk to a lot of our peers in other states, and it's something that we think is really unique to Georgia and something that certainly gives us a competitive leg up. Just want to talk very briefly about long-term planning and then the integrated transmission system. Then I'll hand it over to Bradley to finish up and talk about economic development. Our Territorial Act is really crucial in allowing us to perform effective long-range planning. In addition to the federal government and the Rural Utility Service, which is what a lot of our co-ops are regulated on the federal level from, our wholesale provider, Oglethorpe, collects data from each one of their 38 EMCs that they serve that creates an official load forecast. They submit that load forecast to our Oglethorpe that then takes that into account to plan for what future generation needs we may need going forward. That's important, as I said, as we look to see, in a growing state that continues to grow jobs, we need to continue to make sure that we stay on top of that, to stay ahead of that curve, knowing this the time it takes to develop some of those resources down the line. Finally, I always like to make sure to include this, that those forecasts do not include large speculative loads or loads that may be currently under contract or in negotiation. So once those are in is when they become part of that forecast. As we've seen the state grow, we as EMCs have responded. Thankfully, our state has experienced tremendous growth the last few years. Obviously, the best state in the nation to do business for the last 11 years. We have a very stable political environment, stable and affordable energy prices. And, due to that growth, we have seen a need, and our EMCs have seen a need to invest in some new facilities that I just wanted to point out to you. In 2024, Oglethorpe initiated a process to build 2 new generation assets in Monroe County and Talbot County. Combined, it's about a $2.1 billion investment in those 2 facilities, and those will be in addition to the 16 other facilities that Oglethorpe currently manages in our state that help provide generation services to our 38 EMCs that are members of Oglethorpe's system. Finally, integrated transmission system. This is one that's important for the economic development front that I think sometimes gets lost. But our state has something very unique, which is an integrated high voltage transmission system that is co-owned by the 3 major utility entities: Georgia Power, Georgia Transmission, MEAG Power, and also a small portion is owned by the city of Dalton. This is an 18,000-mile system that gets power, as I said, from our generation facilities to the distribution customers. And the important part about the ITS that we like to point out is obviously it's jointly planned. It reduces the redundancy, also helps keeps costs low for consumers because we're not having redundant resources. But what the ITS does on the economic development front that's very important is it facilitates that customer choice provision. So essentially, any of those companies, whether they're an EMC, whether they're Georgia Power, whether they're a municipal city, can take power out of those ITS substations to serve a customer choice load theoretically. And so it's really the thing that facilitates it. It's jointly planned, as I said, jointly run, and really a unique asset if you look around in the country. Many other states have kind of multiple utility grids on the high voltage side. We only have one, and that's really a leg up for us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bradley to talk about economic development and what his team does to support the state. Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry.
Is this system tied into the regional states in the event that we need to, in an emergency, grab some power from South Carolina or Tennessee or Alabama? Are they tied into this ITS?
I believe that's the answer. I believe that's correct, but let me I can get the answer exactly for you, but I believe that is correct because I know that we've pulled power from out-of-state generation facilities in the past. So, yeah, Bradley?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Bradley Harris with Georgia EMC. I'm manager of our economic development team. What I was going to touch base on today is just a little bit about our community and economic development team and how we all work together. We say we a lot, and we're a little different on the EMC world and the Georgia Power world and the cities world, because these guys that you're going to hear from the economic development, I'm in a lot of meetings with these guys, and we partner a lot with the Department of Economic Development. We say we a lot. We as in The Department of Economic Development, obviously. We talk about the Department of Community Affairs, DOL. You go through the litany of all the things that everybody has to do with economic development. We talk about them. Railroad guys, they're we. And so that's kind of how we all do everything as we sell One Georgia. And then, so what we do on our side, we increase new jobs and new investment on behalf of the EMCs. So from that, domestic and international business recruitment, we have 12 offices, international strategic offices scattered throughout the world that the Department of Economic Development manages. We go with them to trade shows. We go with them to all different types of groups, food shows. We go to a shooting, hunting, outdoor trade show every year, SHOT Show. It's about guns and ammunition and all kinds of different things, all the way down to manufacturing sides of things. We're also a founding member of the Georgia Allies. Georgia Allies is a public-private partnership that came out of the success of the Olympics from Governor Miller, and it is a program that has done great things for us in the state, and it's also tried to be duplicated from so many different facets and so many different states that's hard to believe for people that look at us and say, wait a minute, you guys actually compete against each other for business, but you're also working to sell the state of Georgia. So that's one of the great things about the Georgia Allies. Community and leadership development. These are the folks, like if community development, let's say economic development, we're on the outside. We're on the outside bringing stuff into Georgia. Community leadership development, they are on the inside helping to do the external side of things. So they're the ones that are going into the communities, doing the leadership development, helping people learn a little bit about what economic development is and what the needs is, the sales team, all those good things. The community and economic development orientation program, CDOP. It's a program that we help newly elected officials. This is what economic development is. And then that's how we kind of do that brief explanation for them. Retail development, for those communities that are not going to be the ones that are on the interstate, that are just like the shoe-in for the traditional manufacturing economic development. These are, we have a retail development team that they look to help people find retail, like that's grocery stores, that's gas stations, all those different things in the retail world that help better their community. And then our site development guys and our research guys, these are the guys that put the available sites and available buildings, they give them a voice. And what we're trying to do is, if you just have a random piece of property and you think, oh, that's an industrial site, well, maybe it might be, and maybe it might not be. And what we try to do is we send those guys in, and then they'll go in and assess the land that you have that's available, and they'll tell you if water's nearby, or water, sewer, natural gas, all the different things, utilities that go along with that. And they do all the fancy things of the 3D modeling. They really truly bring a voice to the site. And then from available buildings, we have an available building database statewide. So every single available building that's in the state of Georgia, you can look it up, and we all have our own, but we all share the actual building database that you will be able to look at and see if there's an available building in your community that needs to be showcased for economic development. Sites is proprietary stuff, but we all share some of that information as well amongst ourselves and our guys. And research, they're the ones that help sell the story, that we give information back to the consultants and to different, a lot of times we'll have a CFO that'll come in and we'll do economic development with the CFO, then they'll need to go back and sell the story. Why Georgia? And so we'll help provide the information on our side of why we think Georgia's the best location for their business. So that's it. Sorry, it was super fast, but here to answer any questions if we can.
Thank you, Bradley and Jason. Committee members, are there some questions? And I will also point out that the presentations that we've gotten today, we'll email those out to the committee so that y'all have those if we don't already have those presented to us today. So, all right. Did you, Representative Paris, did you have a question?
You answered it,
Oh.
Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I also am going to recognize Grant Cagle is here today from the Georgia Economic Developers Association. If y'all don't know Grant, you need to get to know Grant, and his organization do a fantastic job providing support to all of our economic developers across the state with sessions and conferences and meetings and luncheons. They have monthly luncheons that are very valuable asset for really everybody. I would encourage y'all, if you haven't thought about joining GEDA, you can join and get involved and learn more about what they've got going on. But Grant, thank you for what you do, and thank you for being here today. Representative Reese had a question.
Yes, quick question. Thank you for the presentation, gentlemen. I guess my question is more toward the last slide when you had the combination of things that you do at a site location to help promote, sell, market that particular site. The items that you talked about, like the GIS mapping and the 3D mapping and things of that nature, is that a typical package? Is that what we see other states doing as well? And what are we doing to set ourselves apart from other economic development entities?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. What we try to do is we try to provide every ounce of information about a site. We don't want any gotcha moments. And so what we find ourselves to be the most valuable thing that we have is our cell phone, because we know the people that are going to have the answers to the different things, zoning, whatever that may be. That's why we have really tight relationships with our local economic developers. Our guys will do this on behalf of the local EMC. So anything and everything that we have that people need, COVID really taught us that we really need to be able to put, like if you look in the bottom right corner, if you have a piece of property and you're trying to figure out, hey, how many buildings can I make this as an industrial park? What sizes fit and all those different things? Our guys look at that. And they do the puzzle piece, and they find the most amount of time, most amount of space that'll fit in there for you. But we all do this, and it's easy. It's easy. I always ask for these questions, and they just poof it out of the air for me. But these guys, this is what they do, and we present all this information. We actually had a recent location down in Henry County. Where we did some drone footage for them. And when the drone footage, we were able to superimpose the building on site. And so they used that in their board meeting to decide where they wanted to go, and it worked out great. And that's one of the things that as a 100% success story for them, and that they loved every second of our site guys. So it worked out great. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your presentation today and for all the work that you do in our state. It's very important. All right. We're going to continue on down our list today, and we have a great team here from Georgia Power. And I'm going to ask that y'all come forward, and then would you mind just kind of introducing who's here from Georgia Power, and if you don't mind, so that we know who we've got here today.
All right. We may have gotten to the portion of the program today where things are going to start to get repetitive, because as Bradley said, we say we a lot, and once we get into the economic development portion of this, and you talk about the services that each of the power utilities provides in support of economic development, you're going to hear a lot of like the same services that we're doing to support the state's growth, and how we compete on the back end of things, but we cooperate together on the front end of things. So that's kind of what we're here to help tell that story about. I'm Charlie Mosley. I'm the Director of Statewide Economic Development for Georgia Power. I'm not sure who all here is in the room. We've got a bunch of our legislative affairs folks here. We've got Sister, we've got Jasmine, we've got Jared, we've got Chris. Jamie's sitting back there. I may have missed somebody, and if I did, I apologize, but I think you know all of these folks. My statewide economic development team are all out back at the office, or hopefully doing work, meeting with prospects, supporting the state's effort to recruit new jobs investment. So as I said, Charlie Mosley, I represent the statewide team. Pleasure to be with y'all today. I'm going to give an overview. Really what I'm going to focus on is kind of how we're structured and what we do at Georgia Power that's maybe unique to us, but also how it's pretty similar to what our partners are doing as well. The first and most important thing that I will say today is that our whole organization, really from top to bottom, is set up to align with the Georgia Department of Economic Development, kind of everything that they do. And that's both from a priority standpoint in terms of target industries, but also in terms of how we're structured. And it's going to sound a little bit like what Bradley said, and it's probably going to sound a little bit like what Scott's going to say next after me. So apologize for the repetition, but it'll be good. Y'all have the full story at the end, and y'all will be able to do the whole sales pitch for us. All right, so this first slide, we've got 3 teams that make up Georgia Power Economic Development. The first is the statewide economic development team. This is the team that works with the Department of Economic Development's Global Commerce Group to recruit that inbound industry to the state. So that's kind of the new stuff that's coming. Second group that we have is our regional economic development team. This team aligns with the Department of Economic Development's existing industry and regional recruitment team. They are supporting expansion projects, but then they're also working directly with the local economic development organizations all across the state as they prepare for the kind of growth that they want to see in their communities. And then finally, we have our strategic solutions team. You heard Bradley kind of talk about their version of it at EMC. These are our technical services folks, so it's our engineering, our research, our marketing teams. They provide all of the technical support services that we offer, both for competitive projects, but again, also to support those local economic development organizations as they're putting together marketing materials to try to bring projects to their local communities. Next slide is our sort of visualization that we've come up with at Georgia Power for the economic development process kind of through our lens. And this is something that Georgia Power developed decades ago, and I think we show it probably every economic development presentation that we give or we're trying to explain to folks what we do. So you can see we've got it here as a pyramid. We'll start at the bottom and kind of work our way up. Leadership obviously is the foundation of kind of any economic development process and success. What we mean for leadership here is really kind of at that local level. So it's the development authority, it's the local elected officials, county commission, mayor, city council, it's the chamber of commerce, it's the school board. It's kind of everybody getting on the same page together and buying into what that vision for economic development in your community is going to look like. That vision is going to feed into the strategy. When you get to that strategy piece, you're going to be asking yourself questions like, what kinds of industry do we want to recruit? What kinds of industry can our workforce support? Do we want to encourage entrepreneurship, small businesses? Do we want to focus on downtown, retail, like Bradley mentioned? What do we want to prioritize and focus on? So that's that strategy piece. The strategy piece is going to inform the services. So that is, okay, we want to go after some industry. Where is our next industrial park going to go? Or we see a gap in our workforce development pipeline. What kind of plan are we going to put together to tackle that? And then finally, when the community gets on the same page with everything and you sort of have that foundational piece all ready to go, then you go out and you actually start marketing your community for the kind of growth that you want to see. And then if we're all fortunate enough, you locate a successful project and the community is able to reap the rewards of that. And again, that could take many different forms, from recruiting a new manufacturer to your community. It could be getting a grocery store in some places. It could be renovating a blighted part of downtown, in some of our downtowns all across the state. So it's really driven, again, by that leadership at the bottom and sort of works its way up to the top as to what the community's priorities are. And that's sort of how we try to support the economic development process through the state between both our regional and our statewide teams. So this slide is really about my team, the statewide team. I'm going to kind of walk through what each of the 3 teams does in a little bit more detail. This is going to sound like what Bradley said. We go to trade shows in partnership with the Department of Economic Development. We talk to industries. We talk to companies that are in the targeted industries that we're recruiting. We're learning about what the trends are, what they're needing for their projects, which companies are growing. We're going to go to conferences where we are networking and building relationships with site selection consultants. These are consultants who bring a lot of the projects to Georgia. They'll get hired on behalf of a company that's wanting to, create a new business operation somewhere. And so these folks sort of, they represent repeat business for us. And so we're able to build relationships with them, and they know that if they've got a company that's interested in Georgia, they know who to pick up the phone and call. And then we're also doing things like receiving RFIs. working on setting up site visits for those companies that are interested in coming to locate Georgia, and kind of everything in between. We have a very unique model for doing economic development in Georgia. It's very different from almost any other state in the country. The Department of Economic Development is the lead economic development organization in the state from the top down. But you also have other businesses and even competitors like those of us in the room together who cooperatively come together and all sort of market Georgia under the Team Georgia banner, because we all know that a growing Georgia is good for our businesses and that it's in our best interest to make sure that we're helping to create a vibrant state. That model really is best in class. We get feedback all the time from companies who have located here, from consultants who have worked multiple projects in our state, that we do it really better than anybody else. The way that we form a team, it'll be somebody from the utility side, somebody from the Department of Economic Development. They form a team. They're going to be that primary point of contact for essentially everything that a company or a consultant needs to know in order to make that business decision. So it's a really unique model. I think Chairman Shaw said that, the business environment in Georgia and our success obviously starts here at the legislature and the partnership with the governor and all of the leadership that we have on the policy side in the state of Georgia. But the way that we are organized and the way that we carry out economic development is certainly a factor in why we've been #1 state for business for so many years in a row. A couple other things I want to touch on before I switch to the next slide. So going back to what Jason talked about before, I just want to touch on customer choice. It's a huge advantage for Georgia. So he talked about the fact that it forces the utilities to compete with each other, and so you're going to get the most competitive rates for those big job creating projects that are looking to come to Georgia. But the other thing that it does is it sort of puts our economic development organizations for the utilities in a really unique spot where we are able to collaborate on the front end of getting a company to come to Georgia. And then we sort of step aside, and there's other people in our business who handle that back-end competitive side. So we're able to cooperate to try to get somebody here. And then once we get them to Georgia, that's a win for the economic development team. And then it's other people in our organization's responsibility to go out and actually win that business to hook up the power. So that's a really big thing for us, and it's why we are all able to go together. It's why we're able to support the state in a neutral way up front. And just to put a finer point on it, what it means in practice is if a company is coming and looking at the state of Georgia, for whatever reason they're working with my economic development team, I'm going to submit sites that are in other providers' territories. I'm going to submit buildings that are served by EMCs or by the cities, because my goal is to get the company to come to Georgia and capture those jobs and investment for our state, not to sell the power. So just want to kind of hammer that point home. And then the second piece that I kind of wanted to hit before I move to the next slide is just related to our overall project pipeline. Chairman Shaw talked about data centers earlier today. They certainly are in the headlines right now, and that is kind of the big thing that's going on, and everybody's talking about it. I would say 75 to 80% of my team's project pipeline is in those traditional sort of industrial and office projects. So we are working on recruiting, manufacturing, supply chain and logistics, food processing, office projects, all that stuff that's sort of the bread and butter of what Georgia has really been good at for so long. So yes, data centers are out there, and they're certainly interested in Georgia, and we are working with them. But the vast majority of the projects that we are supporting are in those sort of more traditional industrial and office lanes. So I did just kind of want to hammer that home. I'm going to talk about the other two teams really quickly, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. So going back to the Regional Economic Development Team, the big takeaway here is that they're really working to support and develop our local communities. So the statewide team's kind of primary customer from an economic development standpoint is the Georgia Department of Economic Development's statewide team. The primary kind of customer, if you will, for our regional economic development team are the local economic development organizations. So all the services that they provide are set up to help local communities get organized around what their priorities are and figure out sort of what their selling points are and how to recruit what they want to recruit. They're subject matter experts in all these fields. My team at the statewide level all sits in Atlanta. We're covering all the competitive projects that are looking all across the state. our regional team is out embedded in the communities where they live and work. And so they're on the ground in the regions working directly with these local economic development organizations to help set them up for success. And they're doing everything from, putting together a strategy session for that local leadership team to go through that's so critical to figure out what your local economic development strategy is going to be. They do training for the Development Authority board members. They can help, put together workforce development plans and strategies for local communities. So kind of run the whole gambit there. And then, of course, they are also focused on and supporting those existing industry expansion projects. So that's another kind of critical part of what they're doing. And then, let's see. Oh, before I move on, just to kind of call back to the pyramid slide, the work that the regional economic development team is doing, we think of that as kind of the foundation of the pyramid. That's the foundational work that gets you set up for sort of the success that happens at the top of the pyramid, which is more related to those competitive inbound projects. Or, like I said, in some communities, it's going to be recruiting retail, or it's going to be doing a downtown, redevelopment project or revitalization project. So the final team for us, just to get a little bit more in depth into what they do, our strategic solutions team, these are the folks who really are kind of on the cutting edge of new technologies. They're always looking to figure out how they can create better products and services, how they can be on the cutting edge of innovation to help our local communities market themselves better, and to help the state of Georgia tell its story better. And so similar to what Bradley talked about, we're going to do a lot of those same things. We are going to maintain that building database, maintain that site database where, folks can go look and search for sites in the state. We're going to be doing the GIS analysis and reporting, the drone imagery, the site layouts, the 3D renderings, all that good stuff that really is kind of a big competitive advantage for the state of Georgia when we do have a competitive project at the table. Bradley told a story earlier that was really illustrative of that point. And then we've got our research team. These folks are doing, on the community side, they're helping communities kind of understand, what their workforce looks like, demographics, are we growing, where are we growing, where do we have gaps in our talent pipeline. When we have competitive projects in, they're providing a lot of that same information to companies, but they're also doing a lot of really interesting and helpful work around visualizing that data. So creating maps of talent, you can look at if you're looking at different sites all around the state where you can compare and contrast what the talent pipelines are looking like. So they do a lot of working with a lot of tools on the visualization side behind all that data. And then finally, our marketing team works in conjunction with the other two. They're really about helping local folks better understand how to tell their story and how to tell a compelling story around why a company or a business would want to come locate in their communities. But they're also working to help those local economic development organizations and chambers to better promote the existing industry that they have there, kind of in an outbound way. So I went through that pretty fast, very surface level. Probably could have talked for an hour. But that's all I have for you, and I'm happy to take any questions if you got anything.
Charlie, thank you. We appreciate your presentation today, and I think Representative Smith has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to say thanks to Oglethorpe and the EMC and the Georgia Power. Y'all know our state as well as anybody, and I can only use our community where I live in Harris County. Years ago, y'all will recognize this name, Jim Lovett. Was a good friend, and he had our commissioners up and sat down in a room for several hours. We were in session. I was there a little while, but he could take Harris County and he could tell you how many people were in the county between 8 and 5. And I really found out we're a bedroom community. They sleep there and they take off somewhere else to work, But he just had all the facts. And those facts, if you take time to look at those and study those, it really helps a small rural county like Harris County. It helps them develop. And there's nothing wrong with being a bedroom community. But y'all just have so many tools to work with. It's quite an asset for us, and we should take advantage of that more as representatives. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate those comments. I know that I speak for my counterparts at the other utilities, but we're really, really proud of the work that our economic development organizations do around the state. We feel like it makes a big impact. We see that in the jobs and the investment that happens on the ground in local communities all across the state. And it's why we do what we do. So appreciate that feedback.
It's probably time, I know our committee has been to your office over there near Tech Plaza, Tech Center, and it's been a little while, but that was a great opportunity that we did. It's been a couple of years. I'll get with Chairman Stevens to see if we can't try to do that again. And
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
good.
We'd love to host y'all, and if we bring you into our space, we can kind of dive a little bit deeper on some of the cool stuff that we do
Yep.
for companies and show y'all some of that with a little bit more time than what I was able to work with today.
Very good. Chairman, Representative Smith.
I was just thinking about something. You know, it's amazing how everything overlaps in Georgia. Michelle and I live on Lake Harding in Harris County, which is a Georgia Power generating lake, and we're serviced right there at our house by Diverse Power, EMC. So that's kind of unusual. People don't quite get that, but it's good, and y'all work together well. Just keep that up.
We do. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you again, and we're going to continue on through our schedule. Scott Berta is here with Electric Cities of Georgia. I live in an ECG city in Cartersville. We're also part of MEAG and MGAG. But Scott, we're going to turn it over to you.
Yes. All right. Third time's the charm. 3 times the repetitiveness. It's going to go great. Great thing about being second is I can just say what they said and be done for the day. So my name is Scott Berta. I'm the manager for industrial development for Electric Cities of Georgia. I'd like to recognize my industrial project manager team here, Chad Sharping and Mark Elliott. We work to recruit industrial development to the state of Georgia alongside our utility partners. And I'd like to recognize Daryl Ingram, who is our SVP COO, who is the director over our community and economic development department. So we are the Electric Cities of Georgia. And we have also partnered with the gas authority cities. So we like to market ourselves as the energy cities. We represent 92 energy enterprise cities across the state. You can see that we stretch from Tennessee to Florida, from Alabama to South Carolina. And we don't really operate in any space there in the southeast corner of the state, but our cities keep us very busy. And these are the cities that many years ago decided to have their own electrical systems or utility enterprises, and they run and operate those on their own accord, just like the EMCs and Georgia Power. And we all have ownership and partnership in the ITS and in our operating generation systems. There we go. So this slide always does this. It looks great on the computer, and then you put it on the screen, and it does this. So, so for our Georgia energy cities, we only make up about 17% of all cities in the state of Georgia. But as you can see, year in and year out, over 40% of the statewide project announcements that are made each year are in our cities. You can see over 40% in FY24, 41.72% of the statewide project announcements were in one of our energy cities. And those include new announcements and existing businesses that are expanding. And as we know, 80% of those are typically expanding existing industries, which shows the business environment that Georgia has. It allows a business to come, locate to Georgia, stay in Georgia, and then further expand, adding more capital investment and more jobs to our community and our state. We like to think that we have the success in these cities because our cities are putting in the work. They're doing what's needed to attract those businesses, to retain them, to expand them, to grow them. And a lot of that has to do with the work that we do with our cities and how we go about it. You can see that Electric Cities is focused on these concentrated areas of concern, and they have mutually beneficial relationship. They overlap, and we all work together through retail, commercial corridors, workforce development, downtown districts, working with main streets, downtown development authorities, our housing, neighborhood, workforce housing is a huge issue right now. We're working with our cities to try to partner, have them meet with affordable housing partners and create solutions for them on that part. quality of life enhancement, and of course industrial development, and all that leads to what hopefully becomes a well-balanced tax base for our communities. This is one of those where I got to click a lot here. Okay, so in business recruitment side, we're obviously focused on industrial headquarters, those sectors of the industrial that we're all focused on: health headquarters, life sciences, advanced manufacturing, retail and commercial, of course the housing. And then on our project management side, just like our other utility partners, we work as that single point of contact for the project, community selection, property selection, and then of course we're introducing these companies to these communities and bringing them down and introducing them and touring them so hopefully these communities can then sell that company on locating in their community. Obviously our community support, just like our other partners, research, data, marketing materials, publications. If they have an event going on, we help them design flyers that they can send out to their community, or if they just want to tell some good news to everyone, we help that look nice and pretty. As they say, I think we read with our eyes first. And community counseling as well through facilitations with council members, DDAs, you name it. Just like as everyone else has explained, Georgia sales team, just a little different approach on how we visualize it. Of course, GDEC is the overarching entity that we all work with. Their international offices are hopefully funneling back leads here to Atlanta, and then the state project managers are calling and partnering with all three of us to work these projects. And we do that through developing product through our community development efforts, to recruit the businesses, we manage the projects, and then we show these companies from around the world all throughout our state. The industrial recruitment project model looks just like this. As I said, the GDEC will call down and call one of us and ask us if we have time to work the project. We'll get together and we will find out the needs from that company, that prospective or the consultant, and then we'll go out and find those sites, those buildings based on their needs. And that's a neat thing about, as Charlie and Bradley have explained, we just want it in Georgia. We don't work in a silo and try to put them just in our electric cities or our gas cities. We go where the project needs to go. We'll put them in Georgia. That's what we want Georgia to win, and then we let the communities and everyone else work to partner with them on the rest of their time in the community. So we'll find the communities that fit the need of the project. We'll submit those community RFIs back to them. The consultant or the company will get together. They will work through the submissions that we submitted. They'll eliminate the ones that don't work for their needs. We'll take them down to those communities that they want to look at, dig a little deeper, meet those folks, talk about what they can do, see the sites, see the buildings, and then hopefully they'll choose Georgia through our presentations and negotiations from the state and local level. And then hopefully they announce and we get to put it in the paper, and the governor gets to make an announcement that more capital investment and jobs are headed our way. So some national trends that we're seeing on the industrial side. Obviously, you're seeing new onshoring, nearshoring, and then the inshoring as well. And of course, what's going on and what do we expect? Well, it's going to be continued as it always has. Manufacturing is very hot for us right now. Distribution, our logistical infrastructure, the ports, the interstates, the airports, it's all working in our favor for distribution and manufacturing. And of course, within all of those, the manufacturing and distribution, increased automation, workforce is certainly a cause of concern. But in that same time, the increased automation is allowing people that just once moved something from one conveyor belt to the other, and that's all they did all day. It gives the opportunity to upscale those people and put them in a better position. And then that machine can do those just laborious things that you don't need people to pay people for anymore. So in that, the workforce, we're seeing companies doing a little more due diligence looking for their workforce. It's not just we just need warm bodies. We need skilled people. We need competent people. We need people who can show up and do the job that they're requiring. I'm the proud parent of a junior in high school. He's in the accelerated career program. He's in the German manufacturing apprentice program. He'll come out of high school with a 2-year college degree in precision manufacturing, and he'll go right into the workforce. So I'd like to thank y'all for the steps you've made in the education of our growing workforce. because I live it every day. So it's been a great program for him, and I'm super excited for what he's going to do in his life. Well, it said prime. It said prime workforce. So companies are always companies are now looking for the communities that understand their role in creating that environment that attracts and holds people. And the holding people is the part where I'd like to transition a little bit into of what we do next at ECG. Because as you know, the workforce migrates a little differently now. Back in the day, we got the job and we moved where the job was, and now people move where they want to live and then they find the job. So it's important that our communities understand that, and that's the work that when I say they're putting in the work, this is the work that we're helping them do. And that is through retail development is one of those ways that we help them work through that. As you know, you can see the tagline in a lot of communities across the state where they're live, work, play, live, work, thrive, live, work, stay. And we're all living and we're all working, but how do you play, thrive, and stay? And that's by having things to do in your community. That's having places to shop, to buy things, those gifts for Christmas, and people that are coming, your guests that are coming. People want things to do, so that's what our cities are doing. And we have a retail manager, Daniel Martin, who works solely for our ECG cities. That's the little bit of difference that we have. Our industrial team works completely statewide, all 159 counties, but our retail development manager works solely for our electric cities. And that's, as Daniel likes to say, we're basically a broker for retail development. So through that retail development, as you know, retail, if you didn't know, retail, when they decide to come somewhere, it's a mathematical equation. It doesn't matter how much they like you. It doesn't matter how good of a presentation you can do. If the math doesn't pencil out, they're not going to put a Cracker Barrel in your community. And we like to help tell that story for the folks that are looking and coming to our cities to put in that retail. And so these are all the things that these retailers are looking at. And they can pull most of this data themselves. They all have access to a lot of the same databases that we all pay for and we all pull. But it's those data points that they can't pull, like homes that are in the pipeline for a community. They don't know that there's another 2,000 homes coming in that's going to add to that rooftop total that they may be looking at. That helps them make that decision as well. Industrial expansions and growth. Those are those data points that our retail manager and our relationship with our city allows these retailers to understand the story a little broader than what that computer desktop screen's telling them. We further that story through our market research and analytic team, our technical solutions team, and this is very important in our retail and industrial projects, as my other colleagues have stated, that research is very important in telling that story and letting these companies understand the community, the state, the environment that they're going to be stepping into, and it also allows them to compare and contrast against the other sites in other states that we're competing against. So this is just an analysis, a kind of example of what we do: leakage reports for retail, SWOT analysis. We pull up workforce, labor, wage data. They can kind of do it all. And then we partner that and couple that with our geospatial analysis and conceptual designs. Again, through story maps, heat maps, we do conceptual design work. In a lot of our cities, as you know, you go to the public and you say, we want to build this community pavilion, and people don't understand what that is, and we help provide visualizations for our communities to go sell their plans and what they need to do, as well as industrial developments, what that building could look like. Our analyst specialist, she's a certified planner as well, so we can help lay out those community developments sites when downtown districts are trying to decide how to expand. As I said, graphic design and marketing materials. We've helped how to start a business in Thomasville. We have incentive plans. Thomaston likes to shout from the rooftop the things they're doing, proximity maps of what's around a certain site. So we work through all these things with our community and our communities and helping them tell their story, as well as those industrial prospects that we're working through. John McBrayer is our manager of community development, and he's really doing that gritty work with the communities of helping those communities grow and be vibrant and be on that same page where you need all those local leaders to understand their assignment and their role. which helps then attract that industrial recruitment and that retail. It's kind of all chicken and egg stuff. You kind of need it all going at once. The picture on here is an old facade of a business in Thomaston. They had a facade grant, and with that grant and some programming, rural zoning program, you can see it's turned into a beautiful new store. You can see what it looked like. That probably was what a lot of us remember walking main streets in the 80s and early 90s, and now it's a vibrant store. So through our community development efforts, we're a resource of information. We assist in visioning and facilitations, like I said, with councils, commissioners, DDAs, development authorities. We provide educational workshops, designation assistance, rural zone assistance, opportunity zones. We have a lot of our communities that can fill out for those grants and get that funding. We provide monthly opportunity emails to our communities as well. But what we try to do is we try to place them in a position to get those designations and those grant fundings through the work that we do with our communities. As you know, the generational shifts, people are looking for experience, trust, predictability. They like to be healthy, and they like to have wellness and opportunities, multi-use paths and trails. Sidewalks aren't good enough anymore. They like that experience of walking through the woods on those multi-use tracks and not have to get run over by cars and golf carts and scooters. And they like that sense of belonging. That's what's drawing our people to the communities, and that's what allows the retail to come, which then lets the industrial come. It all builds upon itself. And then housing choice and quality. You're seeing communities that are reworking development patterns of the last 60 to 70 years that create new mixed-use environments. It's creating new city centers. They're pumping money into their downtowns, but they're also then trying to recreate almost new downtown districts to spread out that business, spread out that success. So our communities are re-examining what we've been doing for the last 75 years and turning it on its head and bringing new creative and allowing new zoning. And we work with them on that and help them tell that story of why that's important. So I went through a little fast because you've already heard basically what we do from two other people before me. But the question was, what sets Georgia apart from other states? And like my colleagues have said, it is the true partnership, it is the true cooperation between our utility partners. I get emails all the time from utility project managers asking for us to help answer utility questions for a building that might be served by one of our cities or information, and likewise we're emailing them for help. We do not operate in a silo. We are a true partnership, and that is what makes Team Georgia the greatest economic development team in the United States. So if I have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. But I think the questions have already been asked the two previous presentations.
Thank you, Scott.
All right.
Any questions? Well, we certainly appreciate the information, and, it's been said before, but economic development in Thomaston or Effingham or Cartersville, wherever it might be, is economic development in Georgia. And so having partners like what has presented today and hearing how they work collaboratively with each other and the resources they have is very, very encouraging, and it's just evidence of why we have been so successful. It's because of your work, working together. So thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to our final presentation. The Ray, Allie, if you'll come on up and present to us today. Our Natural Resources Committee we do a retreat every year, and I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago we went and visited and got a little update, but would you enlighten us on your work and share with us today? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Allie Kelly. I'm Executive Director of a nonprofit organization that was founded in Georgia called The Ray, and I really appreciate the opportunity to run through some slides with you to give you an update on our work. First and foremost, we were founded in Georgia 10 years ago, but we've grown to be a national organization. You can see from the map, we're now operating in 30 states across the country in partnerships with state DOTs, local governments, Native American tribes, airports, and seaports. We partner with almost 60 agencies at the state and local level across those 30 states. How it all began 10 years ago was actually through your own action here at the General Assembly. In 2015, The nonprofit was founded after the General Assembly approved the memorial designation of an 18-mile corridor of Interstate 85 in West Georgia as the Ray C. Anderson Memorial Highway. That designation was made to honor Ray Anderson, who was the CEO and the founder of Interface Carpet Company. Ray was born in West Point and grew Interface into a global carpet company out of LaGrange, Georgia, and that company is now headquartered in Midtown Atlanta. The nonprofit that was founded in 2015 was founded with the mission of philanthropy assisting transportation agencies with incorporating advancements in transportation infrastructure that would result in highways and interstates becoming more productive, safer, more efficient, and cleaner. And to that end, over the last 10 years, through a formal chartered relationship with the Federal Highways Administration and Georgia DOT, we have leveraged our philanthropy to bring 14 infrastructure projects to that 18-mile corridor. Most people regard the Ray as the solar highway, but I am going to talk about that, but I want to start by just giving you some information about the broad portfolio of projects that we've produced with GDOT on what is now known as the Ray Highway. We're the birthplace of GDOT's $70 million statewide connected vehicle program. We were the first implementation of cellular connected vehicle, or V2X technology, for the department. We are also the first location of striping in the roadbed that assists autonomous vehicles operating without a driver on interstates and highways. We recently, just in the past few months, incorporated smart sensors on crash barriers on the Ray highways so that when a vehicle impacts a crash barrier, Georgia DOT is automatically notified of that impact so that they can repair that crash barrier more quickly than their current system allows. We also have incorporated scrap tire waste material into the roadbed. We're one of the first interstate locations for so-called rubber modified asphalt, which is a longer lasting, higher performing pavement that actually allows stormwater from rain events to seep through the roadway and off to the sides so that we can prevent hydroplaning and so that we can improve visibility during rain events. Federal Highways funded 4 lane miles of rubber modified asphalt on the Ray in 2019. We also have incorporated renewable energy and other energy infrastructure along this 18-mile corridor, and we're now in the process of assisting the state of Georgia and other states in following suit, and that really is the value proposition of the Ray. We're leveraging the Ray Highway and our relationship with the state of Georgia to try innovations in transportation infrastructure here first, and then Georgia leads the nation in helping to share the experience and the expertise of those projects to scale this work across the country. Just a snapshot of our funding. I get asked this question a lot. We're receiving federal funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the U.S. Department of Energy. We're partnered directly with DOT as a lead technical assistance provider in the Thriving Communities program, and we're partnered with the National Renewable Energy Lab in right-of-way solar and right-of-way transmission work, which is funded by DOE. We've always received funding from Ray Anderson's Family Foundation and a variety of other traditional philanthropy sources. You can see some of our best Georgia corporate partners like Southwire, Kia Georgia, Norfolk Southern, Pirelli Tire in Rome, Liberty Tire Recycling, all support the Ray through corporate philanthropy. And then like other national nonprofits, we offer a fee-for-service program. So if we're actually delivering a resource or a capacity in exchange for payment, then we structure that as a nonprofit contribution under our fee-for-service program. So we actually end up being consultants to some of those companies listed: Kia Georgia, Goodyear, and Georgia Power. Our very first project is shown on the left. This is actually a project that the Georgia House approved, House Bill 652, which Vice Chairman Van Smith led on alongside Todd Jones. Our very first project was a high-capacity EV charging station, which we installed 10 years ago on the interstate right-of-way. It is supplied by power from a small solar array. This was the first solar-powered EV charging station on the U.S. interstate system, and it was the first high-powered or high-capacity EV charging on Georgia's highways and interstate system. Again, this was 10 years ago, about 3 years after the Tesla Model S started in national production in 2012. So we were well ahead of the curve, certainly well ahead of the infrastructure deployment that we've seen for EV charging over the last few years. And House Bill 652 is exempting the single charging station from the state EV charging tax because it's located on the interstate right-of-way where commercial transactions are prohibited. So you're actually protecting our philanthropic resources by exempting this one station from the state tax on EV charging. So thank you. We're now helping to support EV charging hubs that are solar powered through partners like GridBlock. You can see over a 10-year period how far this has advanced. The station you're looking at on the right is supported by 6 megawatt hours of battery storage, 10 megawatts of ground-mounted solar, and it supports 34 charging ports at capacities of 150 kW or higher, which is high-power charging. That was in 2015. Immediately in 2016, we worked with Chairman Shaw from the Public Service Commission, Tim Eccles, and others, as well as Georgia Power and Georgia DOT to receive approval for a megawatt solar array on the empty highway right-of-way on Interstate 85. This positioned Georgia as the third state in the nation to produce solar power from the empty land on the interstate roadsides, and this was the first in the nation to be produced as pollinator friendly, which means that all of the ground cover underneath and around the solar panels are produced with perennial native plants that flower to support wild pollinators that then go and help to make our rural farms and our small farms successful. So this was the first pollinator-friendly right-of-way solar in the nation's interstate system. And this was produced in 2020 after the approvals were achieved in 2016. Over the last couple of years, we have supported at the RAY the states of Maryland, Maine, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Georgia to produce additional sites. Right now, Georgia DOT has developed a program for approving right-of-way solar, not as a single pilot project, but as a specific program of the department. And we're working on multiple sites right now around the state of Georgia, including some in the metro Atlanta area. Just a note about why you would go into the empty roadsides of the interstate system. Nationally, it creates a grid of underutilized land. There's an inherent streamlining of environmental permitting. That's a very active discussion at the federal level right now, is how we help to accelerate projects by reducing the burden of environmental permitting. And you should know that the interstate system for projects that are prioritized between the fence lines of the right-of-way have what is considered a categorical exclusion from NEPA, which is the environmental permitting law. It means that it is the most streamlined, least onerous, and most facilitated environmental permitting that you can access if you produce the project on the right-of-way. Also, the federal government has waived the fair market value requirement for land assessments for the land that is used for the project delivery. There's over 160,000 miles of national highway system. We've already talked about the permitting efficiencies and the cost of land efficiencies. Something that I haven't talked about is the public's perception of producing solar on the right-of-way. I'll include transmission as well. I don't know how much we've talked about it over the course of the last 4 presenters, but we have talked about data centers and we've talked about other economic development. I'm sure y'all know that we have to expand the geographic area of our electricity grid system in order to energize economic development, particularly with data centers, but also with the onshoring objectives of the Trump administration. We want to produce more semiconductors and more chips in this country. Those are large loads, which means that it's a lot of energy required for those manufacturing facilities. And that's alongside all of the other manufacturing that the Trump administration is trying to facilitate and support in this country, including more auto manufacturing. So when we want to bring jobs home to the United States, we need to energize that industrial development and that manufacturing, and that is going to require us to build new geographies of transmission grid. And so what we at the RAY are trying to do is to understand how the rights of way of the interstate and highway system can accommodate both the expansion of the energy grid and localized energy sources like solar arrays on the right of way to make that energy available and to make that development less of an opposition to our communities. So when you go to the communities and you ask them, would you rather have a large farm converted into a solar array, or would you rather have transmission lines through your community or across your farmland or your parkland? Overwhelmingly, the public prefers that we use the existing land that is publicly held in the interstate and highway right-of-way to produce these projects. The other thing that is great about the right-of-way, we've talked about permitting, we've talked about the cost of land, we've talked about the public's opposition or NIMBYism, but it also, all of this reduces project costs. We can get to market faster with these projects. Right now, transmission projects, for example, are taking 13 to 15 years to produce. We believe with the efficiencies of the right-of-way that we could produce a transmission project in 3 to 5 years. And this is work that we're doing with utilities as well as with the DOTs that manage the right-of-way land. Just back to solar for a minute, and to tie this into economic development, a lot of the work that we're doing with the right-of-way land for solar is with industrial companies and our partners in manufacturing and logistics. So we've got facilities that are adjacent to the interstate and the highway system. They have the opportunity to build solar on the right-of-way right next to their facility and provide a direct connect into their facility with battery storage to achieve grid resilience. So in those times when the grid goes down because of a storm or because of some other disruption, we can keep our economic development assets in those facilities working by tying them in directly to solar with backup battery storage. And this is work that we're doing with several of the Georgia companies looking at GDOT's right-of-way. So what do we do at the RAY? We're just a nonprofit. Well, first of all, a lot of folks have talked about visualizations and GIS. This is the work that is required in order for these projects to actually happen. We can talk about all of the benefits that the right-of-way offers for actually producing these projects at lower cost and accelerating their time to market. But in order to actually get to the projects, we have to know what is suitable on the right-of-way. And that is what we're doing with 30 states across the nation, including with Georgia. So we're able to ingest the parcel data of the right-of-way, the actual boundaries of that land, and then using GIS technology, we're able to understand what is the most suitable sites for a solar array. And I'm not going to show you the visuals for the transmission tools, but we also hold a tool for modeling overhead and underground transmission in the right-of-way. And we're actively using that with utility as well as with state DOT partners. I'll just show you some of what the tool looks like when you use it for solar. So this is our partner in Iowa. This is Iowa DOT's right-of-way. The parcels that are lit up in red, yellow, and orange are the right-of-way and only the right-of-way. So we're just looking at those roadside lands. Bright red means that there's a lot of solar radiation, that there's a lot of solar potential on that parcel. But we also need to account for tree cover, facilities cover, slope, elevation, and topography. When we take all of that into account, the most suitable parcels light up as bright green. So we at the RAY, who control all three of these mapping tools, solar, overhead transmission, and underground transmission, know where these projects can be built. Right now, we're the only organization in the country that has this capability. We're the only organization that has these tools. So once we know where these projects can be built, we're then able to produce 3D models of what the projects look like. We're also able to evaluate them for conflicts. So this is showing you that we've built the solar array up on the right-of-way too high, and it's actually obscuring a visual aesthetic opportunity, what we call the view shed, for people who might pull over and enjoy lunch while taking, a long road trip. So we can actually assess where the solar array might be disruptive to users of the transportation system, where it might be disruptive for the enjoyment of the transportation system. We can also take into account glare of the solar panels, and we can also take into account the state's transportation improvement plan. So we know what projects are funded to occur over the next 5 to 10 years, and we can take those parcels out of consideration so that we know the parcels that we're identifying for development are truly open for development. And then last but not least, from the 3D model, we can then calculate how many homes could be powered, how much power could be generated from that site, how many electric vehicles could be charged, pretty much any use for the power that you would have. We then know how much could be supplied by that solar array. And with the 3D model, we're now prepared to walk the industrial partner or the utility alongside the State Department of Transportation into the necessary approvals and permitting. I tried to go really fast because this has been a long hearing, but I'm happy to take any of your questions. We continue to operate in Georgia. We have 3 more projects for the Ray Highway lined up for 2025, and we're constantly receiving interest and requests for help from across the country. The organization is growing, and we're really excited about what the next 10 years has to offer.
Very good. Allie, thank you for your presentation today and the work that you're doing with the Ray. It's really impressive. Representative Smith has a question.
Thanks, Allie. I'm fortunate the Ray's in my district. If you get a chance, you go down Interstate 85 into Florida, L.A., Lower Alabama, and you're coming home. When you cross the Chattahoochee River, pull in the Welcome Station right there. You'll see exactly what she's talking about. Pull in there and you can charge. If you've got an electric vehicle, you can charge for free. And it's really amazing. I had the chance of being there 10 years ago when those were installed. So, yeah, thanks, Allie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Van.
All right, members, any other questions for our presenter today? Representative Franklin?
Hey, thanks. I appreciate your presentation. This is the first time I've ever heard of the using the right-of-ways for the solar. I just have a quick question with it, just so I can kind of wrap my head around it. If we use 100% of that in Georgia, do you know what that would produce? I mean, where that would move us to? Because we're at 14% now with solar. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't remember the megawatts that are available from the roadsides of Georgia, but I know that it's of the total right-of-way, that more than 12,000 acres of right-of-way are the most suitable acres for solar development. So we have more than 12,000 right-of-way acres that are suitable for solar development.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I can follow up with the energy generation.
All right, thank you. Representative Adesanya.
Adesanya. Thank you, Ali. Just a quick question. And for educational purposes, don't the state keep the side of the freeway, hold the right to that? And they usually reserve that in case of any expansion. So there's a certain square foot that the state usually hold. I was just curious how you all can go about putting the solar panels on that side of the freeway?
It's such a great question. First of all, I should have mentioned that all of our modeling and GIS accounts for a 40-foot safety setback. So safety of the system is the foremost concern and the critical component in planning these sites. And we always reserve at least 40 feet for a vehicle to pull over and receive assistance. It is true that state DOTs manage and maintain the right-of-way, but it was originally purchased by the federal government for the development of the interstate system. And so it's actually no longer federal land. It's been turned over to the governor's office. So it is the state's property that we're managing and maintaining as a part of the interstate system. And after the RAID developed with Georgia Power and the Georgia Public Service Commission and GDOT, the site that we received approval for in 2016, that site was commercialized in 2020, and that actually fed right into Federal Highways guidance that has prioritized solar, transmission, distribution, and fiber for interstate rights-of-way. So solar arrays and transmission development is now prioritized project for the use of the right-of-way. So the reservation of that land that you mentioned is no longer a barrier to these developments because fiber and energy resources are now prioritized for development on that land.
Thank you for clarifying. So separate question, are you all using overhead grid or underground grid?
So the work in Georgia and across the southeast is overhead by the preferences of the utility, and also, of course, we take the feedback and the preferences of the state DOTs into account as well. It's a regional diversity of the preferences. So, for example, in Minnesota, we're looking at overhead. In Wisconsin, they've produced overhead, but in Maryland and New Jersey, we're looking at underground. So it just kind of depends state by state. Colorado, we're looking at underground. Texas, we're looking at overhead and underground.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again, committee
Thanks.
members. Just a few housekeeping things. If you'll get your mileage to Bailey before the end of the day, you can do that right before you leave. I also want to remind everyone that we will meet again on Thursday for our final meeting at 1 o'clock. We have presentations lined up from the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Greater Augusta Black Chamber, the Bullock County Chamber of Commerce, the Cartersville-Bartow County Economic Development Department, the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, and Macon-Bibb Industrial Authority. So those are who is on deck for our meeting Thursday. And at this time, unless anybody has anything else, we're going to be adjourned. Thank you.
I just wanted you to be like, we don't want to go.